in another way. So this is page 37, and we're going to solve quadratics in a different way, and that is going to be called, another way of solving it is called completing the square. Completing the square is a process, it's an algorithm, and you do the same thing every time. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is wonderful. If you gave me a choice on whether to do this or what I'm going to teach you next class, I would do what they teach us next class, because it's a formula that you just plug numbers into. And it lends itself into the vertex form of the parabola. We'll talk about that one next time too, I think. But once again, that's another way to write out a parabola. And once again, when you're solving these things and you have x squared equals t and you're trying to solve for x, you would take the square root of both sides. And when you do that, x is equal to plus or minus the square root of t. Okay? Super important to remember that you have a positive and negative when you take the square root of something. The other thing, which I didn't mention a minute ago, back to your calculator. When you're using your calculator, and here with the Joe and jumping off the screen, they had t's in here and an h there. When you go into your calculator, leave them as f of x and x. So change this to x squared minus 11x plus 15. That's important. Okay, anyway, so here we go. This is called completing the square. And what we need to remember is when you're factoring, this is the format for a perfect square. You have x plus b, and if you squared that, you'd have x squared plus 2b's in the middle plus b squared. Okay, once again, this would be the sum, and this would be the product. The product would be b squared, because b times b is b squared, and the sum would be b plus b, because you'd be doing x plus b times x plus b. All right? And that's the basis for this entire process, is to be able to know these two things. All right, so you're creating a perfect square. That's the whole idea here. So when you're doing this, the first thing you need to do, it has to be in standard form. If there's a y equals, you change the y to a 0. So that's the only thing that happened from here over to here. So now I have x squared plus 6x minus 16. Now, even though 16 is a perfect square, it doesn't go with a 6x. So we're going to move that 16 to the other side. So to move the 16, I do inverse operations. Okay, I use the additive property of equality and add 16 to both sides. Since it's a negative, I add a positive. All right, so now I have 16 equals x squared plus 6x. So remember, it's ax squared plus bx plus c in our standard form. We're going to be looking at that b. All right, so that's what I'm going to look at. I see that my b is equal to 6. So b equals 6. So I need to take half of b. All right, so 6 divided by 2 equals 3. And then I need to square that. So I do 3 squared, and that equals 9. Okay, so I took half of 6, which was 3, and I squared it, and I got 9. So I'm going to add 9 to this side. So this is now a perfect square. But if I add 9 over here, I have to add 9 on the other side. So I do a plus 9. All right, so I'm just going to bring this down. Sometimes when you type these things up, they don't look quite as good. So this has got a 16 plus 9 and a plus 9 there. Okay? Now, I combine this. This gives me a 25. And this is a perfect square. So if you went to factor this, once again, we'd have signs of the same. Both are plus. All right? And since it's a perfect square, this is the way it happens. But the factors of 9 that add up to 6 are 3 and 3. So you'd have x plus 3 times x plus 3, which is x plus 3 squared. That's the whole idea when you're doing this process. This must be a perfect square. Okay? And sometimes it's going to have fractions in it, and sometimes it's going to have numbers you don't think are perfect squares, but it works. So now you have this side is x plus 3 squared, and we're trying to find out what x is. So we have to do the opposite of squaring, which is square rooting. Okay, so I take the square root of both sides. Okay, and you have to remember the plus or minus. This is a nice one. This has got, this we know is a perfect square, so we're going to get plus or minus 5 is equal to x plus 3. So now we need to split this apart. So I get 5 equals x plus 3, and negative 5 equals x plus 3. Kind of like our t-chart. And now I'm going to subtract 3 over, and I get 2 is equal to x, and then I get minus 3, and I get x is equal to negative 8. So it's telling me here that my roots are 2, negative 8. All right, good idea is to check this, and you check it using your calculator. And I'm going to pull up a new graph, hopefully. My thing is grumpy. And I want no, and I want a 2. And I'm just going to type in my original equation, my x squared minus 6x plus, nope. I just got bad signs on that, didn't I? Thank you for pointing that out to me, people. I'm going to delete that and turn that into a plus. I'm going to delete that and turn it into a minus 16. So then I've been going, what's going on here? All right, and I check my roots, and you can pretty much see that. I could go to the table if I wanted to, but that's at positive 2. That's at negative 8, and that's what I got. All right, that's what you got going on here. And even if it was not a rational number, if it was a nasty answer, like we're going to find out in a minute, you can still do that by doing the menu 6, 1, click, drag, click. It gives me the 2, 0 there. Okay. All right. So that's the first one. That was a nice one. Okay. And some of you that, you know, if you got good at this, you could have said, well, I could have factored that, couldn't I, Mr. Douglas? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think it's nice when you're starting out with something that you're going to get a nice answer to. So yeah, I could have factored this as signs are different, bigger ones plus. But I wanted to show you the process because that's what they do in the Regents exam. And still not sure what's going on with that, but that's what they do at the Regents exam. And you need to be able to do this process to get there. All right. Once again, they specifically ask you to do this. Now let's turn to the next page. All right. And slide it on down. So this one, they've already gotten rid of the y. Y is gone. And that's okay. And they also kind of already moved C. And that's okay too. That just means we just don't need to do those first steps. Okay. But we do need to keep moving here. All right. So, and this one's not going to be as nice as the last one. It says to take half of B. So I take 5. That's my B. B equals 5. So 5 divided by 2 is equal to 2.5. And then I do 2.5 squared. Okay. And if you use your calculator, it gives you 6.25. Don't lose your decimal point. And that's what I add to both sides. So I do plus 6.25 here and plus 6.25 there. All right. Left-hand side is 15.25. That's equal to, now once again, we just created a perfect square. Okay, so it's going to be the x plus, since got a plus sign there, the 2.5. Okay, we just pluck that number right there, and that goes right there. Really bad 2.5, and that's going to be squared. And now we are going to take the square root of both sides. It says combine the like terms, rewrite the trinomial as binomial squared. That's what we did there. And we're going to take the square root of both sides. So square root. All right, and this is going to be x plus 2.5. That's the easy part, and that's equal to, I'm just going to write this as plus or minus the square root of 15.25. I don't know what that is yet, but if I write it like that, that's okay. All right, now I'm going to show you first how to find the exact answer. Okay, the exact answer involves leaving this like this. Okay, so I'm going to subtract the 2.5 from both sides. All right, Now, some of you may think that that's going to give me the square root of negative of 12.75, but no, this is outside the square root. This is underneath the square root. So what you do here is you do negative 2.5 plus minus square root of 15.25 equals x. That would be our exact answer. Okay, but it says somewhere around here, we're going to round our roots to the nearest hundredth. Okay, and I still don't know what that square root of 15.25 is. It might be a nice number. Let's find out together. Okay, it's been a while since I've done this one, so I don't remember. And get ourselves a calculator up and do control square root 15.25. Oh, that's ugly. Okay, I don't know whether you can read that or not. It's 3.90512483795. Okay, which means it's irrational. Okay, you can see that's not a repeating decimal. It's not like 0.33333333, that sort of thing. So this is an irrational number. That's why we're rounding it to the nearest hundredth. Now, if you said, hey, Mr. Douglas, find the answer for these two, this is what I would do. I would go back to this, and I'm going to do negative 2.5 plus control square root 15.25 and enter. And that gives me 1.40 blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to round that to the nearest hundredth and put it in a squirrely bracket. So I get 1.41, and I put a comma. All right, and oh, this one does do that. This is good. Okay, this is a really old one. And I go back and I pulled it down and I delete that and I change that plus sign to a minus sign. Make sure you do a minus sign, not a negative sign. If you did a negative sign, it would multiply it. I hit enter, and I also get negative 6.41. Okay, so here's my exact answer with the plus or minus 15 square root of 15.25. Here are my rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, and once again, these are irrational. Now, a lot of times when you do this, it's because you're going to be doing this process because it's an irrational answer, and they'll see that rounding. It's kind of a nice hint to you, like saying, if it says round your answer to the nearest hundredth, they're kind of telling you this is probably not going to be a nice number. Okay? So I'm going to muddle my way through two more, just so you see it, and then that will end us for today. All right, so here we go. So first thing, I'm going to turn that to a 0. And I'm going to do a little cheating here. And I'm just going to write it over there. And I'm going to add that 247 to both sides. All right. And then I'm going to bring it over here so everybody can see what I have. So I'm going to have 247 equals negative x squared minus 6x. Now, if you remember, we already did completing the square with a 6 in there. All right. So just to remind you, it's negative 6 divided by 2, which is given negative 3. And then negative 3 squared is positive 9. This side, this last thing that you add to both sides will always, 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 always be positive. Okay, so I do a plus 9 and a plus 9. And that's going to give me 256. And for those of you who know your perfect squares, you know that that's a nice number. Yay, us. And this is going to be x squared minus 3. Okay, once again, we created a perfect square here. 3 squared is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. Got the negative for the negative. That doesn't belong there. That belongs there. Okay, so my squared should be on the outside. I square root, and I get plus or minus 16 is equal to x minus 3. Break it apart. Strongly suggest you do this thing because this can get really confusing. And I get 16 equals x minus 3, and negative 16 equals x minus 3. I add 3 to both sides for both of these, and I get x equals 19 and x equals negative 13. Squirrely brackets. Yay me. Okay, and I'll do one more. I don't remember whether this one comes out nice or not. Oh, it does. Poop. You know what? I want to do one that doesn't come out nice. So let me find one that doesn't come out nice. All right, so on page 39. What does that give me? Yep, that's going to be nasty. So I'm going to do number 3 up at the top. All right, so, and I think this was actually one of your homework problems. I don't remember. Well, anyway, here we go. So I want to, this one's not going to come out nicely. So I do my 0 thing, and I subtract 32 from both sides. Okay, this is page 39, number 3. And that gives me negative 32 equals x squared minus 20x. Okay, so there's my b is negative 20. So I do negative 20 divided by 2 equals negative 10. And negative 10 squared equals positive 100. So I do it plus 100 plus 100. This gives me 68 equals x minus 10 squared. Once again, we created a perfect squared here, where we have, if you do 10 plus 10, it's 20. 10 times 10, it's 100. Square root, square root. Now, square root of 68 is ugly. We're rounding to the nearest hundredth, even though it doesn't say that. Whenever we're doing these things and we get the irrational, you want to show the exact answer like I'm going to do in just a second. And then you're going to show the rounded to the nearest hundredth. All right, so here we go. I get plus or minus square root of 68 equals x minus 10. Okay, I add 10 to both sides. Once again, this is outside, not underneath the radical. So I get 10 plus or minus square root of 68 is equal to x. And then I use my calculator, which is going to be grumpy again. All right, and I do 10 plus control square root 68. Check your screen. So that's going to be 18.25 comma. And I arrow up and I pull it down and I change that plus sign to a minus sign. Delete, minus, enter. And I get 1.75. Okay. Slide that over so you can see it. Sorry about that. And I think that's going to cover us for today. So that's your completing the square lesson. Your homework, as I said, is one of those real world problems. And I believe I put on page 40, which is this. And I would tell you that most of those are going to come out as nice numbers. I think there's one that doesn't, but you're going to have to figure that out. All right. And there, I believe, is going to be a delta assignment for this. And we'll go from there. Next week, I will be doing lessons on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to be sending out an email to that fact. And we'll move forward from there. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Please, please, please turn in some of the older assignments. We need to keep moving forward, and it's difficult to keep pace if we have lots of people that are like way behind. Okay? Very good, guys. Have a great day.